right? The place has some pretty good food. So just a quick reminder, tonight's reception has been moved from 7 to 10 to 7:30 to 10:30 here in this room. So I encourage everybody to attend. We're going to be announcing the winners of our first annual ITAD Industry Excellence Awards that were nominated and voted on by you, the peers of the industry. So we're really excited about that, so please come out and join us and enjoy that. Also, tomorrow afternoon or evening, in case you missed the memo, we're going to walk across the street and get on a super yacht and cruise around Miami for a few hours in the evening. There's no registration required for that, so if you want to attend, just be ready in the lobby. We'll have instructions for you in the app, but be in the lobby and head out, and we're going to have a grand old time sailing around Miami. So look forward to that. With that, I want to introduce a panel that admittedly is a favorite of mine given my career history in certification. For a lot of people, I know certification is a dull and boring topic. These three, I promise, will make it interesting and exciting and make you excited to go home and start working on your certifications and your protocols and all that stuff. So with that, I want to introduce Daniel, Marin, and Tom, who are going to take you through all the latest and greatest from the certification world.
And thank you guys for being with us. They say the two hardest speaking times is right before lunch and after, and they put Tom on both. So I don't know if they love you, Tom, or maybe not so much. But we're very excited today because, as Daryl said, we are all very passionate about the topic of certifications. We're looking forward to sharing maybe some new information related to trends across different certifications relevant in the industry, as well as some changes that are forthcoming. And then give you a brief introduction to how you can get started if you're not started today. To introduce myself, my name is Marin, and I am the Director of Strategic Industry Programs at CTIA, the wireless industry. CTIA has been administering device certifications for over 30 years, and about 7 years ago, we expanded into the repair world in standing up what is known as WISE certification, Wireless Industry Service Excellence Certification. That's the industry standard for certifying technicians who repair wireless devices, both consumer-facing repair organizations, so we come to you as well as retail, and folks in the service facility depot space as well. We are more focused on the mobile side of the house, but we do work with a lot of ITADs that have mobile business. We're also expanding into Chromebooks. We do a lot in the K through 12 space, hoping to do more. So I'll touch on that today as well. And with that, I want to go ahead and turn it into two guys who were born into this industry and so have grown up in the worlds of certification and ITAD. And Tom, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure, definitely. Thanks, Marin. Can you hear me out there? Yep. All right, great. Thank you. Nice to see everybody again. Thanks for joining me again after lunch. My name is Tom Delich. I'm with Green Eye Partners. We offer services to our clients regarding the certification process, including management system implementation, internal auditing, downstream vendor management, due diligence, and certification body audit support. In my day-to-day role, I'm working with that implementation and conducting a bunch of internal audits. Over the last year or so, I've been in a bunch of different audits, a couple hundred facilities, so happy to hop on today and talk about some trends and changes in the certification world. Daniel?
Awesome. My name is Daniel Puckett. I'm the business director for eStewards. As Marin mentioned, some of you guys may know my dad, Jim Puckett, who's the founder of eStewards, founder of the Basel Action Network. So I've been coming to conferences like this since I was like 10 years old, born and raised in it. And eStewards, if you're not familiar, we certify processing facilities to the eStewards standard. So my day-to-day looks like working with processors, working with certifying bodies, and then talking to folks like y'all.
Great. Real quick, just so we have an idea of what the room and who we're talking to, raise your hand if you have a certification of some type right now. All right, so we got probably about half the room that is, half not. So we're going to try and speak to a little bit of what's going on currently and maybe some changes, and then talk about a little bit of what would look like getting into it. But we'll kick it back to Marin to moderate.
Yeah, no, excellent. So we're going to start because I'm a little biased on repair, which is a very, my favorite topic. But to talk about kind of what we're seeing in repair, I know, Daniel, your organization is starting to do more. You want to talk about what you're seeing?
Yeah, so I think that's a definite trend in the industry as a whole, and I think we all love to see it, more repair, more reuse. I think that's the goal for all of us. And at eStewards, we recognize that it's a growing sector, and we also recognize that our current eStewards standard, or when things go to fully end of life, it can be a little daunting for repair shops to navigate what does the eSteward standard look like, what are all these requirements, et cetera, when a repair side might be a little lighter. And so we took the step of actually coming out with a new standard that should be released soon, that's really focused on the repair side of things. And like I said, it's really to make it a little bit less daunting, take away some of the requirements that don't apply to repair-focused shops. And I think it should be successful. There has been a lot of positive reception to it. But basically at eStewards, we're looking to just cater to that side of the industry a bit more, because I think we all see it growing a lot. And it seems to be where the industry's headed.
I would say from a Y certification perspective, obviously that's what was the driver in standing up our program, was helping to feed the need of those standards and certifications in the repair space. What we're seeing now is for those that endorse or look at different certification programs as contractual requirements or prerequisites to doing business, they all now want something that's more device agnostic. So where you have a device, a mobile device repair program, they want to see something that they can use across all their product categories. So if you look at for the marketplaces, for instance, we work very closely with Amazon. They point to our program as an Amazon premium reseller a prerequisite. They're looking to say, okay, how can we stand up something in a framework that's actually going to look at repair across all product categories? So computer electronics being a big space, Chromebooks, which is why we expanded that program, and even in the appliance sector too, because sometimes it's these folks are collecting a lot of different things. So we're now trying to look at how do you build frameworks and certifications that are going to meet the needs of multiple product categories, both looking at it from a process perspective, but I think the greatest challenge of what we've seen is the people perspective, in making sure that you have a workforce that's credentialed to do repair on different device types. There's toasters, of course, but when you look at a computer, a PC, a mobile device, and that there's battery handling involved, battery safety, and then you get into the device sides of things, which we'll talk about a little bit more, it comes a little bit more complicated. So in our world, we're also focused on creating those pathways to credential your technicians, because I think a lot of the process is already in place for a lot of those high-quality businesses that are doing repair today, and we hope to do more of that as well. Another, I would say, probably biggest buzzword in our industry now is the buzzword of ESG, environmental, social, governance, and so it's becoming the new age in terms of trying to meet financial metrics, trying to report out on your ESG goals, but of course, if you're not looking at sustainability in the way you do business, then you're falling behind. So, Tom, do you want to take us through some of the trends you're seeing on the ESG side?
Yeah, definitely. I know in the moment there is a current development within Siri and eStewards of developing some ESG standards specifically just to certify and be able to give some relevancy to these numbers. The other thing that I wanted to highlight today as a trend in the industry is looking at not only just the emissions, but also your energy usage within your company. So I've seen a lot of companies recently getting certified to ISO 50001. So that's an energy management standard. So that's taking into account your significant energy users for electric, natural gas, and being able to identify where you could save some energy based on different shift stations, production lines, different ways to do that. Some LED high efficiency stuff are some other ideas. In Minnesota, where I'm from, it's heavily reliant on your heating degree days. Down here, it'd probably be your cooling degree days. But what you can do to combat those things, as well as within the climate change, is what that standard is related around. So that's been a good thing in the industry that we're starting to see, being able to certify that you are taking best practices to take steps towards better energy management. And Daniel, I know you have a little bit to speak to on eStewards ESG.
Yeah, of course. I think one thing, the first thing I'll say is, it's definitely a buzzword, and we're definitely probably a little sick of hearing about it. But I think it is for a reason. What we've found is, our customers and then their customers are really starting to ask for it and starting to expect a level of reporting that I think we haven't seen in the industry, and a level of sophistication in that reporting that I think we all need to move towards. And it's not just our customers, it's our enterprise partners as well stressing it. So I think it's definitely here to stay, is kind of my point there. As far as what eStewards is up to, we're really focused on building tools for our processors to be able to, do that reporting, to be able to create roadmaps to improve on their ESG metrics. But at the end of the day, it's really about, the actual tools to measure and then report. So those can be calculators, those can be, report generation tools, et cetera. But I think that's a big key. On the R2 and Siri front, obviously they're not represented up here today, but to speak to what they're doing, they've put together a TAC and are looking to create a standard and some frameworks, and I think that's fantastic because it really brings kind of the industry together and sets the table for, okay, what are we going to be measuring, how are we going to measure it, and puts all those reports and measurements on a level, starting line, so that customers and the folks that are interested in those reports can actually see what's going on. So yeah, that's what we're up to. That's what R2's up to. I think it's here to stay.
Do you have any guidance on how to find one of those ESG calculators? I get this question a lot from facilities, or even just how to get started.
Well, stay tuned. That is what we're working on. For those of you guys that are familiar, back in the day, we put out an environmental benefits calculator that was pretty rudimentary, and I think the sophistication that I mentioned a moment ago is where we're trying to head. So that was basically an Excel spreadsheet with a bunch of data in it. Obviously, that doesn't cut it for the OEMs and your customers of today. So right now, we're working on developing a calculator that's far more comprehensive, that really takes into account, okay, what are the carbon emissions avoided, what are the water, et cetera, avoided when you reuse this specific device, this specific model, when you have your process do X, Y, and Z. So like I said, the sophistication needs to come, but it does take time, and hopefully eStewards will be putting something out soon. But yeah, stay tuned on that.
When we were working on this panel, it was interesting because we do come from different sides of the certification space. And so when we started talking about trends, there was definitely overlap, and it was easy to kind of point out the top four. So we've covered the repair and ESG as the first two today. The third one surprised me a little bit that more folks were seeing it, especially on Daniel's side. But that kind of goes back to the evolving industry that we're in. There's always changes, and there's always organizations that are going to look to partner and specialize in different areas. So if you look at the value chain of what we do today, you might see folks, sourcing out the grading, sourcing out the processing, sourcing out the repair, the 3PL, the kitting. And what that happens is there becomes more of a need for oversight across the whole channel, particularly on the product itself. So obviously on the R2 side, you have downstream. Those downstream vendors have to be qualified or have to be certified themselves. But when you start at looking how much a product changes hands, it becomes a little bit scary to know whether or not that product is actually meeting the criteria of certain standards before it gets in the hands of the consumers. So one of the trends we are seeing now is looking at the landscape to say, how can we bring greater vetting and validation? And where we, from a Y certification perspective, of going with the industry, so everything we do with our program is for the industry, by the industry, meaning OEMs, insurance providers, carriers, device functionality, software testers, and marketplaces are working together to now define a criteria that would actually allow for us to run a functionality check on that device. So test buys are quite normal in our space if you're selling direct. But what we're going to now is actually a validation, a stamp, if you will, a check on the device itself. And that is to add a layer of just integrity to the repair job itself, to the processing job itself, to know that when you're buying products, you're actually getting what you're getting beyond just the cosmetic grade, which, not to ignore cosmetic, that's kind of a phase two, but we see a lot of the similarities in how those are graded and across different vendors. And so the functionality piece with the parts marketplace evolving is becoming more and more important in making sure that device is gonna turn on and work properly for a given amount of time that it should work properly. And I know, Daniel, you're seeing things on your side as well related to performance and conformance. Do you want to talk about that?
100%. So if she's on the device side, right, and we're trying to find, okay, is this device actually have the integrity? Does it do what it says it does? We find that on the processing side as well. So facilities, are they actually doing what they say they're doing? And obviously that's a big part of why certifications exist. But there are some shortcomings there, meaning you only have 1 or 2 audits a year, or you only have folks popping in here and there. So a trend that we're seeing is really increasing that conformity assurance and performance verification, so that what happens when an auditor shows up actually happens 365 days a year. And it's a bummer that's the industry is still there. Obviously we've come a super long way, but there is still a ton of non-compliance, non-conformities, things that nobody wants to see in their facilities. And so what we're seeing at eStewards and what we're trying to do is really increase the performance verification programs that we have. And so what that includes is unannounced inspections, where we show up to a facility with 10, 15 minutes notice and basically run through an audit light. There's GPS trackers that get deployed into the waste stream, so you can actually see if someone says they're sending something somewhere, is it actually going there? And the idea here, as she mentioned, is just to build integrity into these programs. And even though it's kind of a bummer, oversight does build, a lot of trust with customers, and it just kind of raises the industry as a whole, in my opinion.
Excellent. And then lastly, in terms of trends, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about data privacy and information security. Tom, you see a lot of this in your day. Do you want to talk to us about what you're seeing?
Of course, definitely, yeah. So everybody, the ITAD industry does great handling data, overarching, we'll say that. But we do a great understanding what contains data now. Even our smartwatches, wearables, things like that contain data, and how we can either sanitize or destroy those things. We've got to a point where it's pretty well known what types of stuff handles. Now a trend in the certification that we're seeing a little bit is more around not just customer data on devices, but your information security as a whole in your company. So not just thinking about what comes in with the material, but also thinking about your internal data, like your hardware and informational assets, either on your servers or in the cloud. Things like your HR documents, financial records, other paper records are a part of that, as well as IP and trade secrets. These are all things of information that are starting to be more applicable in this. So the new standard that we've been working with is ISO 27001 information security. We've seen a couple more requirements as that to have that certification. There you're identifying all of your applicable assets and then taking a risk-based approach to see where you can identify. This is a little bit more of an IT-heavy standard, so thinking about your different security controls with authentication, authorization, things like that. Just kind of a example of what happened. Did anybody not have a delay on their flight on the way here? A couple. Okay, that's impressive. That's right. Being from Minnesota, we were delayed a couple hours. It wasn't too bad. We were one of the lucky ones that didn't get canceled. But recently we had that IT outage with a couple major airlines. Happened last week, and it was still down even through Sunday when I was traveling. Within the information security management system, you would consider a risk like this having the availability to access the different information. So all of those airlines' ticketing systems were down based on one of their providers that they were using. So you're thinking about who is handling your information and what maybe is the outage recourse, business continuity things in case of that. So protecting the confidentiality, so who can access, integrity, the accuracy of that, and the availability, being able to access that is the idea of this standard that we're seeing a good amount of. As well, along with that, a lot of people take this in scope in our industry as just the data destruction. You can do that. It's not the intent of the standard, but you do already have in place. If you know the standard at all, there's an Annex A. It talks about physical security controls. Any eStewards or R2 will have those already in place. So it's pretty simple to talk to that. But being able to overarch and broaden out what you think of information is not only your clients, but also your internal data.
Yeah, and I'll just add on to that. I think it's probably past the buzzword point at this, this stage, data security, information security, et cetera. But again, it's something that is 100% here to stay. When we talk to our customers, which are, processors, folks like y'all sometimes, the number one thing they say is our customers ask questions about data security. That's what they need to know. And I would say for anybody that's either new getting into the industry, just getting certifications, whether you're getting ISO 27001, whether you're getting NAID AAA, which is an eStewards requirement, have your answers on data security completely dialed. If you have a customer asking about what your data security or information security protocols are, that has to just be so shored up because it's such a major liability for all of our customers. And like I said, it's here to stay as a major, major concern.
So in our industry, we don't see a lot of changes. I think that's a testament to the foundation that a lot of these standards and certifications were built on. I know from a Y certification perspective, we are always open. Changes are raised by the industry, so if things have to be more expansive, if things have to change, if there's no new business models, we have those discussions in a working group forum, and then kind of through discussion and dialogue, move to make a motion to change a requirement. And I think we probably have a new release to our standards on a yearly basis. But there are some changes in the industry every once in a while. And Daniel, do you want to start with some of the ones that you're seeing?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'll start off by talking about our change kind of process. We call it sanctioned interpretations, where basically we take feedback from the whole industry, stakeholders, et cetera, and we listen to what they have to say. We kind of vet it on a case-by-case basis, and then we're able to make amendments to our standard to, try to change it for the better. As she mentioned, not a whole lot of changes all the time, but we do like to listen to feedback and change, when it's necessary. As far as, other changes that I'm seeing, Basel's always one that we have to be mindful of. Unfortunately, I'm not quite the Basel expert as some other folks on my team, including my dad, are. But that's something where the regulatory landscape's always changing, and so is our standard keeping up? But more importantly, even if our standard is there, are our processors keeping up? Are they informed? So when those regulatory changes happen, we try to do webinars. We just did a joint one with Siri the other day on the Basel changes. But it's really important just to keep everybody educated. So if you guys are curious about regulatory changes, et cetera, we do our best to educate. Feel free to check out our website, webinars, et cetera. But yeah, nothing too crazy changes-wise, I'd say.
Yeah, on our side, I would like to highlight one change that was recently made within ISO that some people may or may not know here. Related to ISO 9, 14, 45, and 50, immediately they added the requirement that an organization shall determine whether climate change is a relevant issue. It's kind of a loaded question. So what we've taken as this is, what is it a relevant issue to your organization, and how can you determine your risks and opportunities related to that? So this is in section 4.1 of those standards, talking about internal and external issues. So which we've tried to boil it down to not be as a loaded question as that. It doesn't necessarily specify in that requirement that you have to have documented information supporting this. You could just say, yeah, it's relevant to us. No, it's not. That would be acceptable. But what if you have used our system, you have a risks and opportunities matrix or a SWOT analysis or some internal and external issue analysis. And within that, we've been recommending people to consider the risks of climate change within that tool. So example of that, risks of climate change to consider is the increase of severe weather events. So for quality, you could have supply chain issues. There's even some service disruptions, health and safety, just emergency severe weather coming your way, or even being exposed to that in the working environments, being too hot, too cold. In the environmental side, in 14,001, thinking about the possibility of what would happen if your facility was destroyed or had some damage to it. Is there any environmental releases? That's a possibility. And obviously, energy management, like I talked about earlier, the crazy change in weather will change our heating and cooling degree days. The second change to this is noted that in the 4.2 of ISO, talks about interested party requirements can include climate change requirements. So this allows your interested parties, which includes your customers, upstreams, to be able to define some specific climate change requirements. We haven't in my experience, we haven't had any specifics related to this directly, but as they're making this change, it's probably coming in the future. We'll start to see that. So at the moment, we've just said that you should continue monitoring and ask your clients if there is any specific climate change requirements that they need to be meeting.
I think it's probably similar for you guys in your fields that it may not necessarily be a change, but often what we see is a gap or a need in the industry that's not being fulfilled. So we talked a little bit about repair in Daniel's experience. Another thing where we've kind of risen up and we're trying to play a larger role in is the K through 12 space. So during the global pandemic, when there was a lot of funding out to the schools and school districts to be able to put computers in the hands of their students, there was obviously this explosion of when assets go out, the recovery, the asset management, the repurposing of those assets, the repair, that explodes. And so we've seen that space grow over the last several years, and now we're at a turning point where we're now seeing that funding is drying up. And then now we are seeing the OEMs start their own training programs so that schools can actually put the responsibility in the hands of students to fix their own devices. And with that, though a wonderful trade, something we love to see in terms of growing the workforce, obviously comes with some railroads and making sure that there's proper training and certifications to support those students. So the industry is taking a look both at qualifications and standards to support this space, whether it be those service providers that are doing the asset management, the repurposing, the buyback, as well as the repair, and then also trying to work with the OEMs directly on making sure that those programs on the training aren't brand specific, so that we have agnostic programs that can service all students if they chose to go that route. So this is just another example, and I'm sure, I don't know if you guys have other things where sometimes, like we said with the repair, you see new trends and you're going to have to bring change to help support that trend, and that's one of the larger ones we're seeing.
On? Yeah, there we go. I was just going to add, yeah, I think when folks do see a trend in the industry, whether it be ESG, et cetera, it's, kind of up to the industry to decide whether it sticks around or not. Are you going to lean in? Are you going to provide tools, support for it, as she just mentioned? We kind of dictate what's trending and what's not.
So now that everyone knows a little bit more about the landscapes in terms of trends and changes, how do we help everybody get started? I'm going to start with Tom here, who's a little bit more, I guess, has a wider scope on certification. So how would you advise the folks get started?
Yeah, definitely. When people come to us asking about getting certified, they just say, I need to get certified. The first thing is to figure out what you need to get certified to. There's a bunch of different requirements or standards out there with different requirements. And it's up to you guys to determine what is. We asked right away, is there any internal customer requirements that you need to meet at the moment? Any future customer opportunities you're going for? Another thing to think about is who you're already aligned with. Your upstream and downstream, do they have any specifics, like are they already R2 or Easters, which makes downstream a little bit easier? Is there any upstream specific requirements that you need to meet within ISO or Rios or whatever is going on? The next thing is what's important to you, what your goal is with this program, what you want to get out of it. If it's just meeting customer requirements, being able to demonstrate these things and have transparency is a perfect explanation for why you want to get certified. So then the next step, after we determine what standards you want to go for, is starting to do a gap analysis, see what you already have in place, where you're missing some different things. We like to take the approach that we document everything you're doing currently and then find some gaps that we may not specifically align. If you're not certified already, my guess is you're probably doing a good amount of the best practices. There's just a little bit there that we need to probably bring you up to speed on some different stuff. Within the industry, there's some specific things that you guys know of that would be important. Obviously, CODs, different transparency, downstreams, end of life, things like that are important. But I'll let these guys talk about their specifics and see if I have anything else to add.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that. I think what he pointed out, is there's a ton of different reasons why someone might be pursuing a certification. And they're all really valid reasons. But I think what I've found, or what we've found at eStewards, is that at the end of the day, no matter what the reason, the decision is best when it comes from the top down. If it's just something that you're passing off to, EH&S, hey, go check these boxes, it doesn't work as well. When it comes from leadership and it says, hey, this is how we're going to run our business now, hey, these requirements really matter to us and why, those are the companies that end up being the most successful and end up, really reaping the benefits of certifications. Because at the end of the day, certifications are, as Tom mentioned, a list of best practices, and if you really do follow them or learn why you're doing them, your business is not only going to improve in the sense that you now get to fly, a new little logo or new check, but it's going to improve across the board. It's going to be more efficient. There's going to be more transparency between teams. And then, like I said, the best practices are going to be, actually happening. And so that would be one thing I would say, just as far as when you're getting into certifications, I think it's best when it does really come from a leadership position, and it really is something that the whole company is going to pursue and embody. The second thing I'll say is, if you're looking to get into certifications, I almost always recommend going with a consultant. Go hit up the folks over on Tom's team, maybe find a different one if they're busy, as they always are. But having a consultant help you with the certification goes a long, long way. They know it like the back of their hand. They know your business after you break it down for them. And as he said, you can really fill in those gaps. So what we're doing on the eSteward side, as far as actually getting started with eSteward certification, is trying to have those consultants come on earlier. So the folks over at Green Eye have been kind enough to offer a lot of our prospects free consultations, which really starts them on a strong foot. Another thing we've done is trying to ease that first year burden, because obviously when you're implementing new systems, you're figuring things out. That's expensive, that's man hours, and so we've cut our first year license fees by 50% for all newcomers, because we want that money, going into your actual new and improved processes and labor. And then at the end of the day, with eStewards, we really try to just hold your hand as much as possible. So when you come to us, you say you want to get certified, we want to walk with you as much as we can, step by step. So whether that's working only with us, whether that's hopefully working with a consultant as well, when you come, and you're starting to learn about getting a certification, at least ours, we really will hold your hand and try to baby you through it, because, I don't know if I could get a company certified. It's like, it can be daunting. The standards are a little crazy. There's rules, there's terms you never heard of. And so I would say, ask for help, ask questions, get a consultant, and then, always reach out to us. We're happy to help.
We are pretty lucky on the Y side, because we have two prerequisites to the program, ISO 9001, and then we strongly encourage R2 or eStewards. So when folks come to me in our program, they're very well buttoned up because they've gone through those processes and they're in good shape. But I'll just echo that we're here to help you. We work very closely with Green Eye. They give wonderful support on the audit side of the house. I try and have conversations, or someone on my team, with every single facility that's either seeking certification or coming through, because we want you to be not only come through certification, but we actually want you to become part of the program. We want your voice to be heard. If you don't like something, if you want to change a requirement, if something doesn't make sense, being a part of our community allows you to have that voice at the same level that Apple, Samsung, Amazon, all those Assurant have. And that's something that we do because we want our services to be for the industry, by the industry. So we always strongly encourage that. So I would say definitely take advantage of the support. I love this industry because I don't think anyone's afraid to pick up the phone and call and ask questions, and I love that. And so encourage everyone to do that to get started. Any last minute, I will say, how about last minute advice for seeking certification?
I'll just echo what you said about pick up the phone, ask a question, whether that's, to us when you're seeking eSteward certification, over to them, or whether you're going to a consultant, or even other, folks in the industry, other processors, et cetera, that have gone through it. Obviously, there's a lot of competition. Obviously, it can be cutthroat. But there's people that have walked the path before. There's people that have every certification, under the sun. There's people that have had certifications and dropped them because they didn't see the value. There's people that are dual certified. So talk to your peers. Talk to folks at conferences. Like I said, there's people that have done this before and can definitely help you, navigate through it.
Definitely, yeah. Use your resources. There's plenty out there. Being able to contact everybody and speak to it and ask other people who have gone through certification what their value is. It's been really helpful. Another quick plug along trends and changes. If you follow the Green Eye or sign up for the Green Eye newsletter, we have a monthly update that comes out that gives a kind of a rundown of what's going on in the industry, some of the changes we're seeing within certification. Has some of our training on there, and also a couple of trends and some findings that we've seen over the years and where auditors are going now.
And I'll leave you with mine is promote it. Don't just get it and don't talk about it. Put it on your website, put it on your email signature, put it on your banners. Make sure all of your customers and your partners know that you have those certifications, because that's when the value is really going to be had, and you reap back all that work that you did to get it. With that, we'll open it up. Are there any questions?
Got to be one question.
I think he's coming around.
Thanks so much. Really enjoyed the discussion. Wanted to circle back on the point about data security and the increasing focus there in the industry. Are you all seeing that change trade flows at all, either domestically or in terms of what gets exported, what stays at home? Are there any certifications to be mindful of there?
That's a good question. I assume, all right, I'm going to take a guess. Are you from the UK?
Yeah.
All right, yeah. So he's got a GDPR in place. So great question. Thank you. So within Europe, in the GDPR, there has a bunch of information security and data specific rules. In the U.S., it's not as prescriptive as it is in GDPR. So this is a step. ISO 27001 and SOC 2 do have some specific requirements that line up with that, including identifying legal requirements like GDPR that you have to meet within that. So we're taking steps to get there. On the legal side, I couldn't speak to that, but that's kind of what I'm seeing at the moment.
Not a ton to add there, but I will speak to everybody that's not you, the American, based folks, or otherwise. Is Europe is often ahead, whether it's environmental data, etc. And what's nice about that is they give us a beautiful preview of what's to come. So if you see things happening in Europe, you see the requirements starting to happen over there. Don't wait till they come here. Start getting your processes in place. Start getting the certifications you need. Because it's always, inevitable. The environmental laws that were there 20 years ago are now here. Data laws that are there will eventually be here. So, don't kind of wait around for legislation. I'd say try to get ahead of it.
Hi, guys. I had a question. I've heard a few times today the climate change requirements coming up as a new kind of frontier. Would you be able to unpack that and what the implications are both for the OEMs kind of designing and deploying these products and for the ITADs when it gets to that point?
Keep turning this thing on and off. I should stop doing that. I'll quickly speak to the OEM side, which is, I'm not going to give much of a tactile answer, but kind of a general one, which is, I think, there's a lack of a feedback loop between OEMs and the folks actually processing things. I think at eStewards, we, do our best to try to bridge that gap with our enterprise program where we have the LGs, Samsung, Sonys of the world trying to communicate, with our processors. But in general, I would say that if there are any OEMs in the room in the conference, I think that feedback loop needs to be tighter and closed, because right now I would say that there's a pretty solid disconnect between what the device requirements are and then what the end-of-life processing requirements are, and how that affects climate and all the above.
Yeah, can't speak to any specifics that I've seen at the moment, but with the changes that I mentioned in there, it's definitely a trend that's going to be coming up more and more, and being able to say that now interested party requirements for related to climate change have to be a part of your management system, and all these different ISO requirements makes it applicable to say, all right, these are being audited in your management system and certification body review.
Thank you. Very educational so far. So Kirk Grinning, I'm with Securus, relatively new to the ITAD industry, so I'm going to ask you a new guy question. So what have you seen with organizations that pursue both eStewards and R2? My internal auditor said that there may be some conflicts confliction with having both standards? So what have you seen with people who pursue both, and why would you pursue both or one or the other?
So I'll start off being on the eSteward side of things. Yeah, we have a whole bunch of customers that are dual certified, and I think it goes back to what Tom said as, there's a myriad of reasons why someone gets a certification. So one customer might be demanding eStewards, one executive might be saying R2 is the way to go, a different customer might also want R2. So there's different needs for, different certifications. So I think that's one, factor to it. As far as, conflicts between the two standards, I will say I think they've come, a lot closer aligned. But when it does come to those, small little nitpicky things of what's the right way to do this, basically I just tell folks to reach out to us. We can interpret, what the best scenario would be. But at the end of the day, if you are certified to a standard, you should, do your best. You kind of have to follow those rules. So whenever there's a question on, okay, do I follow this one, etc., I say reach out. We talk closely with Siri, so we can always, collab on an answer. But it's definitely something that works for a whole lot of our customers, and it's something that sometimes I recommend. If you have a major customer asking for R2, you have a major customer asking for eStewards, you might not be able to change their mind. So you may want to, go ahead and get dual certified, and it may actually, return, your investment.
Yeah, in short, I will say it's possible. It's not. I wouldn't say anything really is conflicting. There is just extra requirements in some areas and others. I can think of specifically maybe just mass balance within eStewards, and then specific to R2 some of the reuse stuff related to downstream vendor management, things like that. But easiest thing to be able to cover, health and safety is a part of both of them, quality is a part of both of them, environmental is part of both of them. You're going to be able to cover those things in whatever you choose as your EHS management system, and then it's just some specifics on how you handle electronics. So that's what I'll say to that. It's definitely possible. I wouldn't say it's a bad thing or would be any trickier.
Just anecdotally, I mentioned that we require either eStewards or R2. Back at the inception of the Y certification program, we actually were predominantly R2, so you had to have R2 to come through our program. After extensive industry, I'll say debates, but they're friendly, we had a lot of discussions. We did a lot of, those Venn diagrams, the circles. What do they have in common? I have all of that if anyone's interested in taking a look at that documentation. And we ended up opening it up and accepting both because they are similar and they have, as Tom just greatly summarized. But happy to share if anyone's interested in kind of seeing a comparison. We did a lot of that on our side.
Hi, Jyoti from Flipperphone, Toronto, Canada. My question is, what are some of the must-have certifications a company needs to have in case they want to start their own ITAD business? Must-haves, and also what are the approximate costs they are looking at? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think, first of all, the basis of the certification is a quality management system, whether that's ISO 9001 or RIOS in our industry. Both of them are related to quality, being able to handle and verify your processes, being able to have documented procedures for each of your processes, whether that's receiving, sorting, testing, refurbishing, data destruction, things like that. Quality management system is pretty much the bare minimum of things you'd go through to be able to do that. In terms of cost, it's different every time. With us, we have a package that we can talk about later, but I won't give out specifics. But it's not we usually ballpark it around $20,000 for the entire implementation and CBI support. So that's and then ongoing audits. So just a ballpark. We can get specifics based on what your company is doing too. You have anything to add to that?
Yeah, get eStewards. No.
Yeah.
I think, obviously we're all biased up here. We're all very pro certification. So I would say, get the certifications that you can get, do what's feasible, and kind of always be working towards more is my opinion. You never know what customer out there is going to be won over by, X certification or Y certification. I'll also go back to what I said earlier on the data security front, which is, get a data security certification. Our preference is NAID AAA, but get your data security absolutely dialed. And then I think if you are really looking to be a major player in this space, eStewards or R2 is almost at a point where it's table stakes to really grow and become a major player. Obviously, like I said, I'm biased to eStewards, but one of the two I think is pretty crucial to become a major player if that's your goal.
One thing to think about, as he's saying, to become a major player is downstream vetting, being able to say, hey, we can provide these testing services if you are eStewards or R2. It's just that much easier instead of having to go in and verify all these processes. Having that certification and just having an audit package with that cert on there is instantly in with a bunch of different companies. Anyone else?
All right, thank you guys. We appreciate your time this afternoon.
Thank you guys so much.